Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mike Ferrante, and I'm the panel lead for the Fanalytics panel. We have a phenomenal panel for you with a great group of panelists. First, we have Nathan Hubbard from Ticketmaster. We have Tim Brosnan with Major League Baseball. We have John Walsh from ESPN, Jonathan Kraft from the Kraft Group, and our moderator is Bill Simmons from Grantland. The panel will end at 3:20. We're going to try to take about 10 to 15 minutes of questions at the end of the panel. So if you have any questions, you can text ASK1 to 37048, or you can tweet with the hashtag SSAC. And with that, I'll turn it over to Bill.
Hey, everybody. No more Cuban, as you can see. Hopefully he'll be here. He's running late. So I wanted to start with, I brought my iPad today instead of my BlackBerry. I can see things better. I was at the All-Star game last Saturday for All-Star Saturday, and they made a big deal about how technologically capable the arena was and all that. And I could not even text my friends to tell them where I was sitting. And I guess what happened is people go to these games and they're downloading, sending pictures on Twitter and Facebook and all that. And there was so many requests that it actually crashed the server. So I'll start with Jonathan, who obviously has some experience with this. What, 65? How many people in Gillette?
70,000.
70,000. I know this is a big issue for teams, how to make the arenas Wi-Fi capable. What have you done in the last 2 years to make that happen?
Well, I wish we've done a lot of exploration. Ultimately, we feel it's going to be critical to make the experience in the stadium one that people want to keep enjoying and paying for, that you have the ability to use the devices that you're using in your life every day, be it the iPad or your smartphone. And ultimately, when you're in that environment, it's really about providing enough bandwidth so that people can stream video. And for 70,000 people in a dense geographic area to stream video all at once is a technological challenge that unfortunately hasn't been solved yet. What we have done is beefed up the Wi-Fi in some of our premium areas and created apps that do video, but in a video light format. And I think Priya from Yinscam was here, and she's one of the people that's helped working on the problem to solve getting video streams that really aren't streams to people so that you can enhance their game day experience. But I can tell you at the NFL level and at our team level, we're spending huge amounts of time and energy, and ultimately, when we solve this problem, the analytics that'll come out of being able to see what everyone's doing will allow us to provide a better experience.
When you say beef up, like how much money are we talking here? What kind of a commitment is it from a money standpoint?
We've probably spent $2 to $3 million ourselves in the last year, and we're only scratching the surface of the problem. So with today's technology, if you were really going to do it, and I'm not even sure technically you could, you'd be talking tens of millions of dollars.
Tim, what's your plan with baseball with this whole thing?
But really since 2008, because Yankee Stadium was an antiquated building when we did the All-Star game, was the first time that when our events group was speccing out the All-Star game, they came in and said, we just don't have the capacity. We have to go out and bring capacity in. And when you're overseeing a budget for an event and they come to you with a $6 million addition to the budget for bandwidth, you kind of cringe, but then you realize you don't want the fans to have the kind of experience you're talking about you might have had this weekend. Coming out of that, every stadium started looking at their capacity, and this is a little bit of a softball question for us because this year, in conjunction with AT&T and Verizon, a fund's been created, and every single stadium is going through its due diligence, and the league will, along with the carriers, enhance the Wi-Fi capacity and bring it up to whatever snuff needs to be now, but literally, as our technology guys describe it to us, as we're building, we will be falling behind the curve because of the increased use of devices and the demand for video during the course of the game.
So, I've noticed that the experience of going to a baseball game has changed the last few years. I think out of all the sports, because baseball's a slow sport that has a lot of dead time and you're kind of waiting for stuff to happen a lot. It's what we all grew up with. But it does seem like people are texting a lot. Like if you look around, a lot of people are doing this as like pitches are being thrown and stuff. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, first of all, we like to call it leisure time, not dead time. And that's the beauty of baseball, is the pace of the game allows you to have a social experience at the same time you're at the game. So we think of that as a good thing.
Right.
But to answer your question more directly, absolutely people are using their devices more at our events. And in fact, with our IT plans and with technology, we're going to encourage the use going forward. 50% of all the tickets sold for baseball games are now being sold online. And we've taken that's been the driving notion. What do we do with ticketing going forward? And baseball, the industry, is going through really a ticketing revolution right now. And the pieces that we're really focused on, is this bridge between who bought the ticket, who ended up with a ticket, and who entered the ballpark with a ticket. And once we bridge that gap, once we know who's entered the ballpark with a ticket, then the activity that's going to occur electronically between us and our customer is going to be, it's going to increase exponentially. Therefore, the need for capacity is going to get greater and greater.
Well, it's a shame we don't have the guy who runs Ticketmaster on this. Oh, wait, we do. Nathan, why don't you jump in? Where's this going?
Yeah, well, I think there's, when you talked about the importance of mobile networks in the venue, part of it is for the in-game experience. We also think part of it is for digitizing the in-game experience and broadcasting that outside the stadium. So we got some really cool stats on what social is doing in terms of influencing people to buy. So right now, of kids 18 to 24, 25% of them who go to events are telling us that they were influenced to go by a social post that they saw.
Wow.
Year over year, we're seeing Twitter activity up 7x in-game. And when you couple that with the fact that we've got an integration when we sell half of baseball's tickets, for example, if you buy your tickets, you can tweet that you're going to the game, tweet your seats. Each time somebody tweets that they're going, it's generating $20 in ticket sales for us. So there's a really amazing loop there around how to capture the energy of the in-game experience and actually allow that to be broadcast, and then it coming back and driving commerce. So we're sort of on the outside hoping that the teams, I know they want to because it's good for their business.
Do you think Twitter or Facebook is a bigger player in this whole thing?
Well, look, I mean, we see right now 25x the activity on Facebook to Twitter, but our dollars on Facebook are more like $5 to $6 every time somebody posts to their news feed. So the immediacy of the Twitter post is incredibly powerful.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
I would say your interests conflict as somebody who is very high up at ESPN about where this is going, because we want people in their living rooms watching ESPN. Actually, that's changed in the last year with the streaming and the Watch ESPN app on the iPad. Where does ESPN fit into this whole thing?
Well, we think that the fans' experience is enhanced by going to live events, and we try to bring those live events home and encourage people to go live events. Now, what we've been doing with our plans for Watch ESPN and ESPN3 is we've been bringing live game experiences to the internet, and in the month we're in the month of March, we will broadcast more live events than ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox combined for the year.
Wow. The
calendar year. So we're seeing a tremendous appetite for people going to ESPN3 to view live events.
And where is baseball's plan with the live streaming? I mean, I'm sure, you've kind of gone both ways on the whole internet thing. I think the strategy with YouTube, I haven't agreed with as a fan, because I would love to be able to look up my favorite baseball moments.
I'm aware that you're unhappy with the
I've
strategy.
made my displeasure. I've made my displeasure known.
The interesting thing about that is that policy was developed at a time when, the internet was here and your business was here. Staples.com was separate from Staples. And so a lot of the policies were developed back then have kind of merged and been reformed, and the use of highlights on the internet generally, which again, we've heard from you, Mr. Simmons, is is currently being looked at. The overall use of streamed video. You know, baseball's a content owner, and we have third-party partners like ESPN who have been great distributors of our content. But we've also learned how to distribute our own content, MLB Network being an example and MLB.com being another. It's ultimately the consumer, though, that's going to drive our strategy. And at least right now, you know, if we were in a round of negotiations right now, the consumer is saying, hey, I kind of like this TV everywhere setup that the cable and satellite providers are giving me. If I pay my cable bill, I get to port my content wherever I'd like. We listen to the customer. And if the customer is telling ESPN and ESPN is telling us, I would suspect that, you know, streamed media is going to be made available alongside the traditional television media that we provide our fans.
Jonathan, we talked about this on our podcast a few weeks ago, but I'm going to double dip. You know, fans like me, I actually don't like going to football games because I like to watch 9 games at once, and I like to follow my fantasy team, and if gambling were legal, I'd like to follow that. I like to know what's going on with every game. I don't want to be trapped in my seat just watching one game. Are we ever going to get to a point where on my device I can basically be watching the red zone as I'm at a Patriot game or an LA Jaguars game or something like that?
Jaguars game. Don't take my lack of rebuttal in that last point, meaning that it's going to happen. The answer is yes, and really the gating issue is the Wi-Fi issue. I mean, really, it is the Wi-Fi issue, because today in the stadium, we would make, Red Zone is technically available to do what we want within the stadium. The problem is it would be such a bad fan experience to make it available and have thousands, tens of thousands of people trying to watch it and maybe a handful being successful. When we do this, it's going to have to work. And people expect that. It's what's going on in their life. It's why you were so frustrated at the All-Star game. So for us, we're not offering something that we can't deliver on. We want to be able to deliver on.
Could you do something where maybe I get season tickets for the Patriots, and as part of that, for an extra $75, I get a special Wi-Fi thing with a password that is only direct to my thing, and then I can have the Red Zone on that as part of my tickets?
But what happens if 30,000 of our patrons decide they want that?
You take the $75 each and you pay for the bandwidth.
It won't
we
pay
all
for
win.
it.
We're all winners.
It won't pay for it. That's the problem.
What would it take to pay for it?
I tend literally today for people to be able to stream. It's why we do provide game day apps that don't have video in them but provide other things like statistics of our game and fantasy stats, because we do provide enough capacity for people to be able to do that. But to be able to do video, John, would be tens of millions of dollars if we really wanted 60, 70,000 people to potentially be able to watch all at once.
Well, you have an upscale fan base.
We do.
Yeah.
It's a lot of dough. We're not ESPN. We're not ESPN. We're little guys.
Nathan, I know you're studying this stuff. Do you ever see a day where we'll be able to get that kind of streaming for a cheaper price than it is now?
Well, I think the secondary market tells us that there's a lot of value in going to those live games that's uncaptured right now. And that if you elevate the price in some instances and add services to that, that the fan is going to be willing to pay. So, you know, $3 to $4 billion in the secondary market, 70% of that is sports. That means there's a lot of revenue out there that could be captured to pay for some of the things that the Crafts and others are thinking about. So yeah, I think we're going to get there. But it starts with finding the revenue to pay for it, and we think the secondary market for content owners is a great place to start.
I'm glad you brought this up, because one thing I was thinking was, are we ever going to get to a point where a fan is basically ID'd, almost like how you have a driver's license, and you scan it, and it's like, I'm a Clipper season ticket holder, but I've also gone to these 3 concerts a year, and I've also gone to 2 Laker games, and I've also gone to 8. Like, will we ever hit a point where you can track a fan's behavior basically for an entire year?
Well, I think that's the idea that baseball is really supporting. So
Right.
The digitization of the ticket is about 2 things. One is how can we up front identify that you are a fan, not a bot, a scalper bot trying to grab a ticket? That's problem number one that we have.
Explain the scalper bot really quickly.
So good old American capitalism tells you that wherever there's an arbitrage opportunity, somebody's going to come in and try to take advantage of it. You know, a lot of the tickets in the sports world and in the concert world are obviously priced below the intersection of supply and demand. So scalpers can, when they cheat, using computer programs, come in and grab those tickets before a fan ever has a chance. And so we're really focused. Now, the great thing about the internet is it creates a level of anonymity such that today I can't really always tell if you are a fan trying to get that ticket or a scalper trying to cheat and get in line. So the first thing we're trying to do is use data to get better at how we fight that fight so that we give fans access. We think first and foremost, fans ought to have the right to access those tickets. So that's how we think about it up front. And then through the process, yes, to help the fan, basically have that ticket be his wallet, be his content capture device all the way through, you've got to move tickets into the digital space. And yeah, I mean, Mr. Bowman and others at baseball have been huge proponents of moving that forward.
Well, and it's now gone beyond Mr. Bowman. It's, the 30 clubs have kind of coalesced around the notion, even though you still have the traditional folks who want a ticket and they want a piece of memorabilia from the game. But through the data analysis, what we're being told is that if we can capture the fan, if we can capture the ticket electronically, and the fan carries that with them, the secondary market that we're talking about that we don't, I mean, we do share in to some degree, but not to the degree that our commerce would like to. We don't think that, because the secondary market is as big as it is, obviously we're not pricing our tickets appropriately from time to time, which means that our consumer's not really getting served. And when I see pricing appropriately, everybody assumes I mean the tickets aren't expensive enough. In a lot of instances, the tickets aren't made available at the price people would buy them. They just go unused.
25% of our tickets
right.
go unsold.
We have a 25% unsold rate, and we have a no-show rate that we don't like either. So if we were able to kind of hold on to the ticket electronically, if you will, the whole time, and there are lots and lots of security issues with it, we could make the ticket more readily available at the price it was going to be purchased for. And then we could know who was going to enter the stadium and award affinity. If you were that person who went to Staples and you not only went to 3 Lakers games, but you had seen concerts and you had done stuff like that, well, you're a really valuable customer. You're an executive platinum customer, and we want to treat you that way. We want to give you a special gate, and we want to give you a fluffy pillow, and we want to give you an extra bagel and whatever else American Airlines is giving you these days. And electronic is the way that's going to happen. But it's a long way from being there.
And just to quantify it, if you think about our average tickets per order is about 2.7, which means there's basically 2 people coming to the game that these teams don't have a direct relationship with. And in this time of sort of the deconstruction of the season ticket, where all of us as stakeholders in the event are trying to figure out how we make an offering personalized and relevant to each individual fan, digitizing the ticket is the way to build that direct relationship, find out who they are, and find out how you all can serve them better.
Mr. Walsh, let's say you lived in a world where you had to pay for tickets. Go back to 1972.
Do you want to know how many Miami Heat tickets I paid for last week that went unused?
Does this creep you out a little bit if there was like a fan driver's license and somebody knew all of the habits that you had at a game? Would you like that or not like that?
Well, I've read a little bit about the Obama proposal for the privacy bill, and that's why as these guys were talking about this, that was my question: is at what point do you get there? No, I don't want to give out. Enough information is public. I don't think people need to know detailed and personal information about people.
But how personal would it be? It would be like,
Well, that's what I want to know.
chicken
What's the
fingers.
level?
Yeah.
That's the question. What's the level of information that you're seeking?
I guess it would if it showed that you were having 8 to 9 beers at every game. That might not be a good thing if that was public.
7 hot dogs.
If it was chicken fingers, that's I guess a little.
The fan's going to tell us what he's comfortable giving up.
Right.
And at
So
the
you
end
let
of
the
day-
fans decide?
At the end of the day, I think because they won't come otherwise, right? You either build a good product for them or you don't.
We actually, there's a new technology. It's unrelated to the ticket side of the world, but I think there's a lot of things you can do where you let fans opt in. There's a company, actually it's a Boston startup called Session M, and it relates to apps. And I think as part of Fanalytics, a lot of our fans are interacting with us through our apps. And the Patriots have 4 distinct apps. And we want to encourage people to use the apps a lot, but we also, in a perfect world, would like to be able to track what they're doing and what they're interested in. So this company, Session M, lets you opt in if you want to. You don't give up any privacy information other than your name and your email. And we can watch how they use our app, and we're starting to run regression analyses around what people are doing and what other activities within our apps they're doing. And we're learning more and being able to profile and actually push opportunities to them that are interesting to them. And I think it's working, and it's all done on an opt-in basis, because I think you're right, that's a critical part of it. On game day, though, there's a barcode on a ticket, and we do let all our fans know that for the well-being of everybody in the building, that when they enter the building, they're subject to a set of rules, and we're going to be watching and paying attention so we can manage the building. And we haven't had any complaints about it, and it has let us learn a lot about our fans and be able to do a lot of predictive type models of how we could better serve individuals.
What's the most valuable piece of information for a profile that serves your purposes of a fan?
Related to in-stadium, I think to serve them, if we see that they aren't taking advantage, let's say, that night games they don't come to and their tickets aren't used. With Nathan, we're partnered up in this thing. We don't allow our tickets to be sold in the secondary market except through a private exchange that we have where tickets transact at face value only to people on our wait list or other season ticket holders. It's a very liquid market. And if someone isn't using their tickets, to Tim's point, we want them if you don't use a lot of them and you realize you're throwing money down the toilet, they're not going to stay season ticket holders very long. We've given them a vehicle to get rid of it without anybody knowing and to get their money back.
Let me give you a concrete example of how we're using data to make the experience better. So there's a baseball team that you occasionally write about that angrily that figured out from looking at the data of who was buying a particular section that these were actually all small business owners, and that they were using this section ostensibly for client use, and the team didn't know that. So they went in, they reinvested in the food and some of the amenities, changed up some of the offerings, were able to actually increase the price and increase the overall sell-through of that section because just of some simple data that they learned about who that individual was. Through the normal course of the commerce process, they don't get that level of detail around how those seats are being used and who those people are.
Playing off that, Tim, it seems like baseball at all the sports, that's the one where people share season tickets. Like I know a ton of people who, there's 81 Red Sox games, and they have a little thing where it's 9 and they each get 9 games and all that stuff.
Right.
How do you track that? Is that a good thing or a bad thing that happens?
Well, it is actually a good thing because, again, to your point, the season ticket holder purchases the tickets, but ultimately he uses 10, depending on how rabid a fan he is. And you know, the question about privacy, we're not looking to mine the data to go sell it to companies that want to use it. We're looking to mine the data to make the in-stadium customer experience better. And so, again, I talked about what the data is going to do for us and what the conversion from a hard ticket to electronic and digital ticketing is going to do for us. Is bridge the gap I talked about. It's from the season ticket holder who we know bought that seat for the entire season. And actually I saw a fascinating study. It wasn't a baseball study. It was the Cleveland Cavaliers, or the guys who are, I think, furthest along in the NBA. Their average attendee in certain sections of their arena, the ticket changes hands 9 times before the person comes and sits in the seat.
9 times?
Wow. 9 times. And so, and again, and it's a different consumer every time with a lot of these tickets. So it's really about us being able to identify or take the original purchaser to the customer who's in that seat and try to do things for that customer that are going to make the game experience more entertaining.
Nathan mentioned earlier the secondary markets, it's like about $3 to $4 billion. We just almost lost an NBA season because they were upset about they weren't making enough revenue from, I mean, I think every sport would want to make more money. What are the obstacles with these secondary markets? Like why do we even have them? Like I know they've embedded themselves into sports, but why can't we fix this?
We have them because we suck at pricing.
Yeah.
And because, in fairness, there's some parts of the secondary market that are really valuable. They're a distribution channel. And any guy who's willing to take risk and has close personal relationships with people who want to buy is valuable in the chain. The question is whether that's being done legitimately and transparently or through cheating using bots, that kind of thing. So I don't think there's anything wrong with the secondary market. I think, as you said, the transfer of tickets is something we want to support and do support. I think for teams, it starts at how do I price this experience better? Sometimes that means higher, sometimes that means lower.
With all this expertise, and this is an analytics conference, right?
Yeah.
With all the expertise in analytics and algorithms and everything, how can we possibly suck at pricing at this stage?
Well, we're getting a lot better, but the one piece of it is, quite honestly, there's some teams that still are feeling their way through this. So we think about dynamic pricing really 2 ways. One is variable pricing, which is when you put the ticket on sale for the first time, do you segment the pricing tiers by customer type? Do you do more than charge 2 different prices for the 90,000 seats that you have to sell? So teams have gotten a lot better at that. There's probably, we think almost 90% of the teams across the leagues, except the NFL where there's some rules against it, that price variably out of the gate. But there's only about half the teams that price dynamically. So when Jeremy Lin comes to Sacramento, guess what? Google search queries for that goes up 9x, ticket sales go up 5x. Should the ticket price go up? We think the answer is yes, but from a branding perspective, there's some teams that are afraid to wade into those waters. I think what we're seeing now are teams using the tools that we're building them, that we're really in early days. This is the first year that our clients have had access to those tools. And they're finding what's right and what works for their brand. At the end of the day, the fan's going to communicate back very easily whether or not he's happy with how you're pricing your inventory.
I know in basketball, there's real estate in basketball that should be worth more than maybe a seat 8 rows down. And they'll price a section. Like my Clipper tickets, the seat that I have, which is like basically dead even with the 3-point line, is worth the same as the guy 8 seats over who's, closer to that basket. It's not as good of a seat. Jonathan, why haven't teams gone further and basically priced it by the seat? I mean, you know what the really good seats are versus the good seats versus the decent seats.
Yeah. I think it'd probably be impractical to have 15,000 price points in a basketball arena or anywhere else. But you try to. From an administrative standpoint, look, in our case, I think what Nathan said, I think in sports like baseball, and baseball in particular, where a significant number of the seats are individual game tickets, I think you can do that. In the case of the Patriots, we're effectively 98% we could be 100% season tickets. And to price every single ticket in the building differently it just wouldn't work. A guy might have 8 seats in a row. And so what we try to do is we look at the building and divide it up into basic geographic areas and charge appropriately. But you're right, within that price point, somebody's getting the best seat and somebody's getting the worst seat. And every year, we're doing more and more analysis using the barcodes that are on the tickets to determine if we're off on where we cut the line. We create these things we call heat maps, and based on the behavior of the people that own those tickets, i.e., are they showing up for the games? Are they reselling their tickets? Are they buying their playoff tickets? we determine if we think they feel like they're getting the right value for their seat. And if they're not, we change the price. And we actually tweaked a little bit of pricing this year based on those types of analytics.
And Bill, aside from that, you know, one of the fears, although it hasn't been realized, but there's been a little bit of that, when you go to too much variable price, you get on an airline, you don't ask the person next to you how much their seat cost. But I guarantee you, your seat costs different than the guy next to you, 9 times out of 10. In the ballpark, when people are going to the ballpark, at some point there's an exchange about how much did you pay for that ticket. And Jonathan doesn't want his season ticket holder one sitting next to the other, knowing that he paid $100 more than the other guy. I mean,
That makes sense.
there is a piece of this about our customers' expectations having to change over time.
But in baseball, I think we've seen the last 10 years, like they jacked up the prices down for that front row where you can reach over and get a foul ball. That's now a more expensive seat than it used to be.
In some ballparks, yes.
But the secondary market has us already there, right? There are people who are paying everything from $2 to $2,000 to be in the game that night. And I think, as you said, it's just a process of getting the fan comfortable. I'm not sure how many times, you know, they're leaning over saying, hey, how much did you actually pay to come tonight?
But it's the guy, and it's actually, I was thinking of Jonathan's dilemma, because he's got the same fan sitting in the same seat 8 weeks in a row, and they've made a big investment against that seat. And the last thing they want to think is they somehow got taken by the club. That's the breach with your fan that you don't ever want to have, that they somehow got less value than the guy sitting next to them. That would be like the worst offense.
Right, and that's why the value that John and others are trying to add to those season tickets to make it so much more of an experience than just the seat that you're sitting in is so important.
John, from ESPN's standpoint, what kind of analytics are we using to figure out the habits of our fans?
We have a terrific research department which shares a lot of research with the leagues and about the behavior. We're into the marketplace every day, and we're looking at behavior. For what we do in terms of creating content, the biggest analytics really are the answers that the fans give us every day by voting. As watching television sets, we get ratings within 24 hours. We get traffic estimates. We get not estimates, we get actual traffic on Grantland and all of ESPN.com. We find out the length of time that they're spending on stories to estimate it. We know the types of stories and the types of games and the types of fantasy games that people like to play. So we understand it. As far as the actual devising of the content, it's kind of reading the Steve Jobs biography. It's give the people what they want before they know they want it. And that's pretty hard for research to determine. So if I read a Bill Simmons column and I say, damn, he's a pretty good writer, we ought to hire that guy. That's gut, that's instinct. And then we just say, okay, we're going to hire Simmons. And sometimes those hires come with added challenges for management. Sometimes but always, I think we've been very fortunate in having a tremendously talented staff, many of whom are on panels here yesterday and today. But it's the decision about a story, the decision about how much you give to Jeremy Lin. Yes, you have some analytics that come into play because you know that Jeremy Lin is, I saw, responsible for 50% of the NBA merchandise over a 10-day period in the whole league. So you figure out there's a pretty good interest in Jeremy Lin. So some of that stuff is obvious, some of it isn't, and a lot of it is gut and instinct.
Tell them about that thing we have for the website where they can look and see exactly where all the traffic is on every cluster of the site at all points of time. It's a little weird. But
It's interesting because I was getting prepped on my iPad, and Michael Cupo, who works for us, came over and he was showing me. He says, well, let me show you Simmons. So he comes over and he shows me the Simmons chart. And all of a sudden you see this bump in traffic, and then we go and see Bill's tweeting. You can actually see in real time with the tweets and how it affects the traffic. In the same way that when a game gets exciting or something happens at the Daytona 500, like happened on Monday night, and people start texting, the ratings go up.
So, and the same thing with, well, two things. One, I got to give a kiss to ESPN because we're talking about analytics and research. And 12 years ago, Artie Bulgren and Glenn, I don't remember Glenn's last name, and I assume you two guys are out there. They were the first research guys who came to our office, and we didn't feel like they were just selling us a line of bull. They were drilling down on their customers, and we love all our television partners, but ESPN were the first guys doing analytics, and they were doing it really well and continue to. But I'm glad we're not talking about tickets now, because the social space for us, the most exciting part of the social space for us, again, is to be able to talk to our customers in real time and get immediate reactions and react to what our customers do. But last year at Home Run Derby, we created this experiment. We put players on the sideline, behind home plate on either side, and we had them on Twitter and Facebook during Home Run Derby. And I can tell you that when a particular player put out a particular tweet, for that 6-minute interval of the television show, the ratings spiked. And we tweeted, and we were on Facebook, and we were on the social space the entire time in Home Run Derby. And the ratings for Home Run Derby year to year went up. The ratings for the All-Star Game year to year went down. It's the first time, I think in the last 10 or 12 years, when those ratings didn't correlate together. So we attributed this drive in the ratings from the activity in the social space that ESPN did with us. We're very excited to be able to use the social space. I think your questions to ESPN are, aren't you nervous about the social space? Aren't you nervous about people going elsewhere and not watching television? I think we're going to be able to use the social space to drive people to our television program.
Totally agree. Nathan, do tell them about tweeting during live music events.
Well, yeah, I think the top 10 most tweeted moments of all time, maybe now Whitney Houston's death, but that sort of counts because she was music, is music, right? So those guys are telling us it is what people are using because it encapsulates the power and passion of that moment, right?
Right.
And the irony right now is that actually at some of the amphitheaters and festivals, the wireless networks are working better to capture that energy than the sports business. So we've got to follow suit quickly.
So this goes to anybody, how worried are you about, like I was at the Super Bowl, everybody's holding their cell phone up or their iPhone up, they're taping stuff, they're going to put it on. It just seems like that's where, I don't know why people do that actually. It's a little weird. Like I could have just watched the game at home versus some guy in like the upper deck just taping the kickoff for some reason. But like it does seem like just everything is going on YouTube now. At what point does this compromise like some of the rights deals you've had and all that stuff?
We're not worried about that. I think it just empowers the fans. It's not anything that's gonna compete with what John's doing. And I personally, after our AFC Championship game where the kick went wide left, I went on YouTube that night to watch fans' videos from the stands because we didn't, and it was awesome. I must have spent 40 minutes watching different clips from different parts of the stadium, and and I actually had our social media guys, we tweeted out the link to it because the guy was right in the section that the ball came into, and you see the section right behind the goalpost start to go crazy first, and then it came around like the wave, and it was fun to watch. And I think social media is only an enhancement. For us now, we've seen our web traffic to the .com site be stable for the last 24 months, but our audio and video consumption on our website have gone through the roof because now every time we create a new piece of content, and we're doing it multiple times a day, we'll tweet out a link and we'll post it to the wall on our Facebook page, and people can watch it within those environments, and it's going through the roof. And I think social media is only a big plus for everything that's going on.
No, I want to make the point because of the looking at the video. We had a 30 for 30 film called Catching Hell. I don't know how many of you saw it, about the Bartman game in the NLCS. And Alex Gibney, the director, got a whole boatload of video from people in the stands. This was kind of sports citizen journalism at its zenith, where a lot of the documentary, actually, we were able to document exactly what went on in that section of the stadium, thanks to video on phones and video by citizens and fans.
One of my favorite YouTube clips ever is the guy, David Ortiz, the single, or the homer in Game 4 against the Yankees. I don't know if there are any Yankee fans out there, but yeah, take that. ALCS, and it's this great like Blair Witch Project shot of the hit. I can't remember what game it was, but it's a hit and the crowd's going crazy. And I think it's become kind of, we actually worked it into the 30 for 30 about the Red Sox. It kind of became part of the history of that team. Unfortunately, I can't watch the actual clip on YouTube.
Here we go.
Tim.
You don't like
your
our
policy,
YouTube
but
policy?
It's nice to have that clip at least.
All right.
But you know what? Just a small, subtle point. YouTube's actually the only place right now that's doing a good job of organizing that real-time content. Facebook and Twitter right now, in the moment, you can capture that, but there isn't a place to go sort of relive the experience on Twitter and relive that on Facebook. So that's one of the things we're thinking a lot about, is how to work within their APIs to pull that in and sort of pull that energy of that live experience into the digital space. It'll be interesting to see who can do that.
And musically, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because if an artist is doing the same show in every city, and they're putting up clips of the same show, does that make somebody less likely to even go to that show?
You know, let's put it this way. There are a lot of artists who don't want their shows streamed in real time, for sure, because they're playing the same event every night. But you know, this summer in our amphitheaters at Live Nation, you're going to have artists who literally let you tweet to vote for the encore. So I think they're figuring out ways to pull it in to enhance the experience. And at the end of the day, they'll find a way to use social to drive the conversation and therefore to drive commerce.
The bottom line is it's not going anywhere. And it's part of everybody's everyday life. And if you fight it, you're not going to win. If you learn how to adopt the way and adapt to it the way Nathan's talking about, it'll be a big plus. And I can tell you at the NFL and with our digital media committee, we're working very, very aggressively to figure out how we do that. And then the real holy grail, and I know it's going to upset John, is being able to know who those people are and know a lot about them and capture them for life and the data and start to do analysis about them so that A, we can better serve them, but also hopefully monetize that, and it's good business for everybody.
Tim, what have we not mentioned yet that you think could make the in-game experience better, that your team has come up with as some possibilities?
I don't even think it's the in-game experience. It's the use of social to talk to our customers. It's the ability that social gives us to talk to our customers about in-game and non-game experiences. I mean, we've created this thing called Fan Cave. And if you haven't been there, in fact, we invited you to come down and do movie night with your boys, and you haven't gotten back to us. So consider that an invite. I might even let you watch a few YouTube clips that night, too.
That'd be great.
We created this content engine in Manhattan to be able to talk to our fans through Twitter and Facebook about things baseball related and not baseball related. Our struggle is always to be in the conversation that's going on the handheld, you know, 24/7, 365. And what the social space has allowed us is to create content that kind of puts our players off the field in a different light into a space where we become just part of the conversation. I mean, I talked to, you know, I'm older than a lot of our young guys, and the water cooler did exist when I started working. And on Monday morning, the water cooler or the coffee cart or the kitchen or whatever it was the place we sat down and, you know, you shot the breeze about the movies or the bar you hung out in or the bowling alley or what game you watched. And, you know, this is the water cooler now, and it happens 24/7, 365. And what we've learned is we took this fan cave concept and we've taken the players and inserted them into a conversation about the Kardashians or a movie or whatever. You know, we've just kind of gotten in the stream of discussion. And you asked the question earlier about, aren't you guys worried about people holding cell phones up and taking clips and sharing them? We know from studies that, you know, if your friend sends you something about a baseball player or a baseball game, it's 27 times at 27, 30, 25, whatever. It's 27 times more effective an endorsement than if we sent you an ad. So the more we can get people engaged in talking about baseball in that social space, either through clips or game action or some goofy stunt we do with Big Papi walking down the streets of New York saying, you know, can I get a hug? we think we're better off. And the social space has been enormously effective for us to put stuff out there and realize in real time what's working and what's not. It lets us pivot in a way that we were never able to pivot before.
Mr. Walsh, what sport do you think is the best equipped for everything that's happening going forward? What will benefit the most?
Well, I think all of them are really immersed in this. You can tell from Jonathan and Tim's reaction to these things. And I think what I like it is that it's all a game for them and a competition, because they know they have to learn from each other and they have to be better than each other. So I'm just a nice spectator on the sidelines watching this competition, which is a lot of fun.
We got a couple questions from the audience.
Switzerland.
Nathan, how do you view ticket resellers like StubHub, and do you envision future partnerships there?
Let me answer the question generally. I mean, we think that, well, two things. Yes, we're supportive of the resale market. We own one. It's called Tickets Now. But here's how I view ticket resellers in general. I think that if you just put your fan hat on, you just want to know all the options to go to the game tonight. And I don't think we as a business right now are doing a very good job of answering that question for the fan. As a primary, secondary, it doesn't matter. And I think, to me, it's a little bit like, I mean, the secondary market's here, it's not going away. So how can we, as an industry, solve that core problem? I think there's an artificial distinction between primary and secondary, basically because the two smart guys who started StubHub called it something different. Really, if you're a fan, you just want to know, what are all my options to go? So yeah, I do think there are opportunities for partnerships if we're solving fan problems versus just creating more confusion about where do I go to get the right ticket at the right price for me in the right moment in time.
Tim, does MLB having a relationship with StubHub interfere with the Ticketmaster relationship?
That would be for Ticketmaster to answer, not Tim. I think I think both the business partners are satisfied with us. We do have a relationship with StubHub. I don't know how much longer. I expect that relationship to continue for a while, but to Nathan's point, proper primary pricing, however that evolves, is going to take care of a lot of secondary purchases. If the tickets are available at the right price at the right time when the customer wants it, and you talk about analytics, with these guys we can determine 20 different variables affecting a ticket purchase for us. And baseball's a little different because of the amount of inventory we offer to the fan, but I'm not the right one to answer whether the two are getting away with one another, but I think we're going to see the day when pricing is pricing is pricing, and it's just going to be about the fan getting the right inventory at the right time for the price they're willing to pay.
Well, let's say this Taiwanese American point guard just randomly landed on the Knicks out of nowhere and became a star, and people will pay any price to watch this player and his team. Is there a way to capture the dynamic pricing for those games in a way that doesn't piss off fans? Can you adjust it? Is it fair to adjust the tickets at that point?
I think the answer is unequivocally yes.
Yes. What do you think, Jonathan?
I think that the time sequence of this is, yes, you can do it, but it's so affected, and we're in such an urgent world, that an immediate world, that, oh my God, he had another great game. Does that put the price up a couple of dollars? Or, you know what, there's some seats that are unsold and it's now day of the game, it's 4 hours before the game. What adjustments are we going to make in these markets to do things? So I don't know if you're ever going to get, what Tim just said, I don't know if you're ever going to get the prices right, pun intended, that is always going to, that you're going to be able to reach that point, because there are too many variable factors that are attached to events that could lead to price adjustments.
Nathan, what's the Price Master thing you guys have?
So that's the product that the teams are starting to use that we built, that pulls in everything from monitor data from the website so that we know in real time what people are looking at, what they're buying, what they're not, conversion data to real-time Google search query information on individual teams and keywords, and putting that all into a box of algorithms that then spit out, for this particular seat at this moment in time, this day, this is the price that that seat goes for in the market. And then the teams use their gut, because it's not just a science, there's an art, to make a decision about whether or not they want, for their brand, it makes sense to go there. Sometimes, by the way, that model says take that ticket to $2. And the teams have to make a decision about whether or not they want to frustrate the season ticket holder, devalue the inventory in that way. Works the same way on the downside.
That's a real issue. And I think and in football, we really don't face it the way the other sports do, I think. But the issue of ticking off a season ticket holder when individual games start selling below what he or she is paid on an individual game basis, and B, the brand issue. And it relates to everybody, because if there's a team in Major League Baseball that's selling tickets on a dynamic basis 4 hours before the game for $3 or $4 in their upper deck, it devalues the product, in my opinion, of Major League Baseball in general. And in the NFL, we fortunately don't have the issues because we have less inventory, and the issues to the same degree, we still have issues. But we talk about the brand issue a lot. And I think that's a really significant thing.
The irony of that, let me just jump in just to make that point. The irony of that is that in a lot of cases, the people who are dumping those tickets are season ticket holders who are brokers, because they are making their money off the Dodger-Yankees series, clearing their cost at maybe half the games, maybe 25% of the games, and the rest, they can dump it. They can dump the Nets-Pacers game for $2 because it doesn't matter to them. So the irony there is it's actually a problem of our own making, because we're not pricing that package right out of the gate to take some of that margin off the table and put it into the content owners. Excuse me.
Yeah, and Jonathan, that's what argues for more control by the club, who can set its own parameters.
We sued StubHub, so I agree with you.
Right, I mean, that's what
100%.
argues for the club, who can set its own parameters, and again, no one likes, XYZ Yankee tickets or Red Sox tickets available for $1 in September. That's not good for the brand. And again, that's done in the secondary market that's not controlled by the club. So going to full digital ticketing with dynamic pricing that the club is controlling in conjunction with its partner, they make the decision whether they want $3 tickets associated with their brand or not.
Right, but I think you have an issue at the league level at that point, because I think if there's a club on a Wednesday night, I mean, the Pirates are playing whoever, and the tickets are, it's a major, no, I don't, I didn't mean it like that.
I jumped out before you said Pirates. I take that back.
I didn't mean it like that. Actually, they've got a beautiful stadium. It's worth real money just to walk into it, but
Come back.
Just pick two teams that aren't Boston or New York.
I got you.
And for Major League Baseball, I don't think it's I don't think it's good that there are tickets even that the team is pricing at $3 or $4, because it just says I don't know.
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with you.
I think, for us, we think about it as the inverse of the Napster problem in the music business. What happened there was technology that kind of fundamentally devalued the product. The irony in our case is maybe it's not irony, but it's flipped on its head, right? The technology is actually showing us that in a lot of cases our tickets are worth more in the aggregate than we're charging them for. So I think you can't necessarily control that away. At some point you have to get at the fundamental root cause, which is we got to price them better.
Tim, playing off this, I've noticed that the Dodgers, the Yankees in their new stadium, and the Mets in their new stadium, when you're watching the games, you'll see empty seats. That shot from center field on home plate. And it's been a real problem at these games. It feels like you're just watching on TV, and it's like, are people there? And then they have another shot, and you see it. Like, we're now entering year 3 of the Yankees-Mets issue, and the Dodgers are going to be an issue until they get new owners. How do you solve that issue with the empty seats? Is there a way to maybe move people in? What do you do?
Well, we are much more a states' rights league than clubs control that issue. Do we point that out to the club? Are the clubs aware of that? Yeah. Do we as a league have an ability to affect that? no. I would suggest to you that during the postseason, you don't see that when the league moves
Right.
in. Some of that has to do with the amenities that are otherwise available. These aren't just no-show seats, but I think, look, nobody wants to see empty seats, clubs included. So I think you will see clubs more and more be attentive to that issue.
Did you ever think about having a seat filler program like with the Oscars? If somebody leaves,
I've never heard that discussed.
That's called papering.
I've never heard that papering discussed, no.
You can steal that if you want from me.
Okay.
I'll
I
give that
actually
to you.
saw the guy with the pink ruffled tuxedo that was the Oscar seat filler. I was thinking about maybe we'd get him, but no.
Jonathan, what team in whatever league are you, I don't want to say envious, but when you look at another franchise and you say, that team gets it, I want to learn from that team. That team's doing stuff that either we're also doing or I need to learn from them or take stuff from what they're doing, tricks, anything. Is there a team that stands out?
I think we're always looking at all the teams in professional sports, both in this country and certainly in the EPL, where I think there are some interesting things going on. And when we look at other teams, we're looking at improvements, everything from physical improvements being made to the ballpark, to what people are doing with social media, to the concession offerings they're making, to then even how they're running the on-field or on-ice elements of their team and the analytics that are being brought to bear there. And we're constantly looking at everybody everywhere because we know there are a lot of smart people and the people in this business are getting smarter every day and we always want to learn. So there's not one in particular, but we're always looking at everybody.
You just wouldn't give me a team, would you?
If
Just
Cuban
wouldn't do
was
it.
here, I would have said the Mavericks. But
Wait, go back to...
and he would have been pissed if I didn't. So
By the way,
so
Cuban, he got here and we have the 4:30 BS report
So
with him.
Mark,
we'll be
if
hitting
you're
him with all
listening,
this
the
stuff.
Mavericks.
Yeah.
We look at the Mavericks. For everything.
Go back to what you said about you said you were learning interesting stuff from the EPL. What are you learning from them?
I think the EPL have done some interesting things, both with some of the new stadiums that have been built over there and some of the on-field analytics that they're bringing to soccer and the ways they're tracking the physiology of players. These are teams, this isn't at the league level, and how they're doing some of their analysis, I think, has some parallels for how we try to do the analysis, the on-field analysis for our football team.
Mr. Walsh, there's an MLB network, there's an NFL network, there's an NBA TV channel, and there's an NHL network, and there's a golf channel, and I think there's a tennis channel.
There is.
What network does ESPN look at as a network that's doing stuff that we're learning from and maybe trying to steal, copy, anything?
I think that we'll look anywhere. I mean, we'll steal anything. I mean, I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about the difference between plagiarism and actually taking an idea that works and applying it to what you're doing. I think we look at all kinds of programming. We do so much studio programming that it may be something that's on MSNBC or Fox or whatever it is. There are no rules. And now we're going to be looking at the YouTube channel and looking at the things that are going to be coming through the internet to see if there's things that we can elevate and bring them to ESPN. But we're proudly cheating every day.
Good. Nathan, Jonathan mentioned a company earlier that he liked, the Boston company. Give me like 2 or 3 of your favorite companies that have popped up, startups, whatever, that are just coming up with stuff that's really helping you.
No, I can't tell you that because that jacks up the price for me.
All right, give me an idea then.
No, look, we just bought one in December called Big Champagne, and they are essentially a big data company that goes out into the ether, pulls in all kinds of information about what fans are engaging with, normalizes it, and makes it easy to digest. So we're really interested in these little companies that are either focused on how you take data and make it personal and relevant so that you can serve up content and commerce in interesting ways, or companies that are solving real fan problems, and we've got a lot of them in this industry. One of our biggest partners is a little company called Market Share, that does dynamic pricing in other industries better than anybody in the world. So we partnered with them to build that Price Master product we talked about.
Do you feel like but that's something that's happening more and more and more and more of these companies are popping up like every 6 months?
I think so. I think some of them tackle the wrong challenges because this is a complicated and sort of ugly little business sometimes, that the learning curve is steep. But there's some really interesting companies right now that have figured out at the core, we've got a problem around pricing. How do we use information to help to get to know that fan to get the right ticket in his hand? So,
because we have some smart people in the audience. Maybe some of those people could help you dynamically price
Well, they should come work
things.
for me, not them.
Yeah. All right. I guess we're out of time. Thank you, the panelists. Thanks for everybody for listening. It was fun.